Go ahead and call to order the special meeting for June 18th, 2018. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilperson White. Present. Councilperson Yon.
Present.
Council President Gill.
Here.
Councilperson Owen.
Here.
Councilperson Ellis.
Here.
Council Samuel. Person Samuel.
Here.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Let the record reflect it. 6 are present.
Okay. First on our agenda is the charitable donations. Callie, I think the biggest thing before we know how to proceed is to see, I guess, to kind of get a consensus of what the council wants to do. Wouldn't that be your recommendation, to see if the council wants, if the majority wants to continue to, and have some sort of policy, continue on to address the nonprofits, or just simply say, no, we're not going to give to nonprofits?
Yep.
I think we got to answer that question before we know how to proceed. Discussion? Thoughts?
2000 OR, when it 9?
2000.
OR 9.
2000.
What are you referring to?
Oh, I got it.
This 2009 ordinance, apparently it was
Oh,
presented
yeah.
in 09 that just passed in the public record.
I think it was 2000 OR.
09, 18, 2000 is when it was. 2000 or 55.
2000, not
2000, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, 2000 or.
What was it, 2000 OR?
55.
55.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Ron, you're referencing that because it never passed. So is that an ordinance laying out a policy for nonprofits, or to not give to nonprofits?
Actually, that was an ordinance that was suggested to allow each council person to have a certain amount of money in the city budget that they could use, at that time, that they could use for projects in their districts. My suggestion at this time, while we're talking about charitable donations, is that there be a certain amount of money in the budget for each council person that they could donate to nonprofits if they wanted to.
And I think what was originally proposed, I think, Callie, you can take it from here, wasn't that we were looking at taking a portion of somewhere in the budget, can't remember, was it gaming?
Yeah, so
25,000, so.
Yeah, so it was technically it's within the special projects fund under the city council, but the revenues from that fund come from a variety of sources, and one of those sources is the gaming revenues, which we know about. And so the number that was thrown out was 20,000 from the gaming revenues that is allocated under that council special projects, knowing that monies coming from the gaming revenue is preferable to, money coming from any other sources. So that was where the suggestion was made. I think what Councilman Ellis is referring to would include the special projects fund as a whole. So that would also be money from the general fund probably, and looking at that special projects fund or money that is allocated and saying, okay, between each council member, maybe each council member gets 5,000 or 10,000 to be allocated to each district, and that large members to do with what that council member sees fit. Is that correct?
Yeah, and along with that being correct, if the council members as a whole seem fit to all go in and take some money out of each individual council person's allocation and put together for a nonprofit, or if a council person just wanted to support a nonprofit from out of what they had been allotted, they could do that.
Currently, what has been funded out of our special projects, and I know this year that took a huge chunk of it, was that invoice that received from the county that we were never presented with. I don't remember what that,
Pictometry.
yeah, but I don't remember what the amount was. But it,
$22,000.
yeah, 22,000, and I know that's typically where if somebody asks us to buy a table, or if the one of the ball teams come in and need help getting, I mean, we usually give money for that.
Yeah, so historically, the things that have come out of special projects, when I took a look at the past several years, it was one-off things, as you're mentioning, so specific tables for events or, tickets, things like that. And then there also are, if I'm not mistaken, some membership fees that are taken out of there that have line items, where they're called, which we fund every year, like our membership for AIM, I think, comes from that fund. And the whole idea, if you remember, just going back several months now, the idea is that if we are going to have charitable donations as a council, that it be done in a transparent way and in a way where all nonprofits are aware of those funding opportunities, as opposed to the ones that just come to council members, or that we happen to know about. So it's really coming from a place of just transparency, if that's what we want to move forward with. But I also think it is a very viable option for the council to say, maybe it's also just as helpful if we avoid that altogether. And I completely, agree with that standpoint as well. What's important to me is that we have a clear policy and that we move forward in that way. So that's why I wanted to present both options.
And when Finance Committee, you brought the caveat kind of to that one option is if we do, that it'd be for basically capital projects, not for their operational. And I really like that idea.
Which that was reflected in the proposed ordinance that our attorney provided, being that those projects occur within the city of Jeffersonville and that they don't contribute to operating costs and expenses, that instead they are for significant projects that impact the community, that there be an application process for those projects, and then to our attorney's suggestion, which I think is a great idea, having a committee that is appointed to review those applications based on a certain criteria that's disposed. So I know that it was mentioned at the last meeting, and then because of my absence, we kind of tabled it here. I know I've spoken with several members of the Finance Committee. The impression that I got from that meeting was that it would probably be cleaner and good to just have a policy that says we're not going to look at funding nonprofits, and we're going to stop that process. So that's kind of the feedback that I've gotten so far, but I would like to have a discussion and see where the council's at before we just move in one direction or the other.
So does that mean then the council wouldn't, we wouldn't be putting money towards any of those events that we sponsor, or some of the other one-time projects that we've supported? None of it, like other than probably Jeff Main Street, that has a line item in the budget. And
yeah, so when I sorry, go ahead, continue.
Go ahead.
When I talked to Mr. Wilder about that, we wanted to make sure that we were protected in the language that we provided either way. The recommendation that one council member made to me that had been considered was for any entities that are under the city umbrella, that they would not be included. So which would need to be defined. I think that was referring to like City Pride and Jeff Main Street and things that have direct connection to the city. I don't know the legalese of that, or if that's what we want to do.
There are,
Into the budget,
yeah,
yeah. But, okay.
but the reality is, there, no matter what ordinance, and I think Mr. Fistine is comment, no matter what ordinance you adopt, with the exception of if you set aside money to each individual councilman to use, that period of time that that ordinance was in effect, that money would be in there for that individual councilman's discretion to provide assistance, etc. But the reality is, you have money, and there's always going to be in a line item that you can use for promotion, so to speak. And you can vote to use it for anything, regardless of what it says. Does that make sense? Well, it's just the reality.
Yeah.
So,
I think that we have a lot of good people that do good work in the community, and sometimes we don't have, we as a city, as the city, we don't participate as much as we actually have a vested interest in what these other people do. It says something when the city gets behind a project like the Norton Cancer Center that they put in across the street from the hospital. As a city, if we have the ability to embrace things like that, I think we should, and I think we have. I think that's a rightful place for us if we have, dollars that are not necessarily property tax dollars. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of giving me a pocket full of money to go give to my organization. I don't think that as a councilman, I don't want that on me. It should be us as a council deciding how we're going to allocate those dollars. But I do think that we should continue to at least have some sort of allocation to some of these organizations that do very good work that otherwise wouldn't get done in our community.
so maybe it'd be helpful to us walk through the proposed ordinance that sets aside whatever amount you all come up with and how you distribute it.
We can do that. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think what Councilman Owen is referring to is something different entirely, in that it's not necessarily an application process, but rather that the way that the ordinance would be set up, maybe we define what it is we won't contribute to, right? Whether that be, operating expenses or things like that. But then other than that, just leave it open for if there are instances where we feel that it's necessary. Is that correct? As opposed to having, this is maybe the dollar amount that we are planning on spending, and then, we applications, it's more of a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
And so we just in more detail define what it is we won't contribute to control the spending.
If you need to. I think there is value in having some sort of application process or grant process, for someone who wants, city dollars to come to the finance committee or whatever committee and write a proposal and then be judged, in a separate meeting on that proposal, based on the amount of requests and the amount of dollars available. I just wouldn't want to see us get out of...
Completely eliminated.
Yeah.
Just a couple thoughts. Without question, we can do whatever we want to do on this. Whichever way we want to go, we just decide and we'll go with it. If I've been through part of my time, we've been through where we did support and not-for-profits, and then when we scaled it back and basically did not, and now we're kind of going back to doing it again. And I like the idea of being transparent and open. If we're going to do it, let's do it, offer it to everybody, every not-for-profit. Mm-hmm. Problem with that is there's hundreds of not-for-profits in our city. Mm-hmm. And so then we become almost like a foundation.
and then people come, and then do we want to, I don't really want to sit, and I probably won't ask not to be on that board or that,
Right.
the one that
Who's
makes the
this?
decision, because I don't like that's the problem. We can march however many in here, and just about every not-for-profit that I know of can make a good case, and I don't want to tell them no, and we have limited dollars, and with the limited dollars, it doesn't seem like we can truly make an impact on that. Any not-for-profit can always give you a request and back that up for a small amount or a large amount. So
Yeah,
I just,
completely agree.
in my, in my opinion, I do think that there are times that there may be an emergency need. I know when it's freezing cold outside, we've had different ones come to us and say, we need some heaters, or we need whatever their case is. And that seemed like that was a service that was being provided to folks that are in our community that we could certainly help and justify kind of an emergency need. I certainly didn't mind to have that come before us and have an opinion on that. But to open it up, I'm more leaning against. I would just prefer us not doing it, and then refer them to the community foundation or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think what's complicated about it is, and I am in agreement with everything that you've said. I also would not want to take a stance and say, we're not going to be funding nonprofits, but then have that not actually be robust and substantial in practice, So I'm very leery of saying, okay, this is the stance we're going to take, but what about all of these cases, or is there a loophole or a workaround for certain things, and then I question, well, maybe that's not the right direction that we should go in. So that's why I had made a comment of saying, well, maybe if we instead define what it is that we are definitely not going to be considering for funding in the future, that helps us to scope it down. But then if we do that, then we're kind of operating as potentially as we have been, where it's okay, organizations that know that funding's available, they have some sort of connection to the city and know what the city's, then they're the ones that are going to be coming.
And, from one standpoint, budget time's a perfect time to line item some of these. I'm in favor of, like when we have our Little League teams going state and maybe World Series, the name Jeffersonville is all over that. Or they talk about being from Jeffersonville. So I'll look at that as like, okay, that's kind of one of those unique, not every year deals that we could put, and we're talking very small amount for those type things. And maybe we need to line item a small pocket of money for promotion. I know the mayor has a promotion budget. I don't know if the council, I don't think we do, the council does, but we could consider, and even tables and things supporting different things. That is, when you go, you're promoting the city. You introduce yourself as you're representing the city. Those are promotions, so maybe a line item for that. And then maybe a line item for emergencies. And then, and I don't know how big a line item you want for that, but, and maybe there's more, I haven't thought it all the way out, but maybe another line item for special cases. And then let not-for-profits know in general, the city does not really accept applications unless it's an emergency or whatever. And then that may handle most of it. It may not. It's really difficult because you can't, there's always a circumstance that's going to come up. And I don't like trying to set an ordinance and then knowingly go right around and violating that if we can help it. But that's just a thought. And yeah.
Have we had a huge number of nonprofits approach us?
It was historically, it has been something that has been an issue prior.
But not during our time.
Not really, no. Other than where, I mean, we have had a number of organizations that have come and asked, for supporting certain annual events or asked for contributions that, for different projects. I mean, we certainly have had that. And where this really originated, I think, between Councilman Samuel and I was, okay, well, we seem to be getting these requests again, right? And, should we have more of a policy about what we're willing to support and not, just because of the idea of having a policy behind it. And again, for me, it was really a transparency thing because there are so many annual events, there are so many Jeff events, there are so many nonprofit organizations. And so having a few that come to the council and we're always like, oh yeah, we'll do a table for that event, seemed to not be equitable to me. Knowing that there are all these other things. It almost felt like, oh, they know that the city council they always contribute to this event every year, so they continue to ask for it, but other organizations weren't aware of that. So that's kind of where the idea originated. But I would not say in any case that it's a spending problem at the moment, or that it is in dire need of addressing.
Do we know that these other organizations are aware, or are they just accused of that? Do we know that?
I know some were
I
not
can't
aware
speak.
because I've had 2 calls from different individuals, different not-for-profits since something was in the paper, and they said, well, I didn't know the city gave away money. And I'm like, well, we haven't. Sometimes we do, but I'll tell them you're always welcome to come to the meeting. So, that's 2 out of hundreds. So I don't know.
I mean, it would be impossible for me to answer that accurately. I'm sure it's probably a little bit of both, but I would say that it's probably more of an awareness thing than it is a not pursuing.
Well, the reason that I proposed going the way that I did was because we have had council people to make a proposal for giving to certain organizations. And we basically tabled that until we had came up with something as to which way we would go. And so it was my suggestion at that point that we go this way with individual council people. Now, I think it should be a very limited amount of money. I don't see giving each council person $5,000 to just give away. What I do see is maybe $1,000 per council person and then to be able to use in that situation. But I think that when we start looking at getting into the large, when you take 9 council people for $5,000 a piece, you're talking about $45,000 of money. And I think that would be, matter of fact, to me, that would be outrageous. But if we kept it at a lower amount and something that would be acceptable to all the council people, and I have a problem when we start giving away big monies to nonprofit organizations. And I especially have a problem as to how we choose which organizations we want to support. I'm like Nathan, I wouldn't want to be on that committee to have to make a choice between one or the other. When we have people coming in asking for support for us to choose dogs, and then we'll have someone else come in and ask for us to support the homeless, who's willing to make that decision?
Well, a potential option could be to, I'm going a couple different directions. So first, to just address your suggestion, Councilman Ellis, my hesitation with doing that is that it equally opens up council members to have to choose between nonprofit organizations. So, I can think of a number of organizations just in the 3rd district alone that I would not want to choose how to spend a proposed $1,000. That I feel that that opens me up to is more, even potentially more difficult of a choice than if we had an application process. So that's my hesitation with that option. I do, what we can, I mean, this is, as I said, this is not something that we have to immediately decide, you know, for the entire future of the city of Jeffersonville. This is going to be our policy. Perhaps, you know, it sounded like most council members were supportive of any charitable donations going toward, not going toward operational expenses or items that occur outside of the city. I think there's a lot of good language that our attorney had drafted up about what things we would not consider. And to me that, you know, or maybe we say, you know, we won't be purchasing tables at events, and instead focusing on case-by-case situations. Maybe we just pass a resolution or something that says that this is, you know, we are still willing to support our nonprofit community. You know, these are some stipulations that we will not consider, but we are open to any member of the nonprofit community coming to the council, you know, with requests that fall under this. And then we just see, I mean, if we have a huge swarm of people coming to council meetings, you know, requesting things, then maybe we readdress it, we address it again and say, okay, maybe we do need a control, but we wait until there's a problem. I mean, is that another option?
So if we say we're only going to focus on capital campaigns only, for requests for funding, how does that come into play when we talk about an example like Mr. Samuel talked about with the Little League when they go to a national tournament or something like that? It's not necessarily a capital campaign, but it's a one-time fixed
I think his
expense.
suggestion is to create a promotion of the city, kind of promotion line item in the budget for something geared specifically for that.
Well,
Is that
I
my understanding?
believe
That could be one way.
Okay.
the
That would
language
include the tables.
The language that Mr. Wilder proposed specifically said that it wouldn't go toward salaries and operations. So it was maybe defined a little bit differently. That might be, in my opinion, an event such as that. I don't if it's not an operational expense every year like your personnel salaries and things like that.
I
That
gotcha.
would qualify for that. But I would support having some type of resolution or an ordinance if we want to further define what we are willing to consider and not willing to consider, and at least that would address some of the awareness, you know, that the council has considered some of these projects in emergencies or in cases, and then at least we are making it more aware to the community and not just favoring certain organizations. Okay, so it seems like, would you support that? Having an ordinance that narrowed what the council would consider, but leaving it open.
It only deals with operations.
That's where we are right now.
Hmm?
I said, that's exactly where we are right now.
Well, we don't have anything that's defined, and we've, supported.
You know, we don't have an
Things that
ordinance or
have-
resolution stating that. We're just kind of going by request by request.
Yeah, the way it is now, frankly, whoever comes before us first usually gets, because we don't want to say no. And so we started talking about, well, maybe that's not fair to those that don't know that we're doing this, so let's advertise we're doing it. Then we said, well, we better think that through. And so, it's just...
But it seems to me like individually, we're afraid to say no, or we're afraid to say yes. When you were elected to these seats, you were elected because of your good judgment and the thought that you would be able to make a good decision about the city's finances, because that's what this board is responsible for. So Is it that we're afraid individually to be seen as not supporting something or either supporting something? What's the difference in what we're doing other than an ordinance?
I'm happy the way it is now. I'm okay with each council member receiving a certain allotment. And although Mr. Ellis thinks 5,000 is outrageous, I'd be happy with that. Because I do outrageous things sometimes, but I would say it's a good cause.
Sometimes.
Well,
I think that these nonprofits help our citizens. So I think supporting them, using our judgment, I think is a good thing for the city. We are fortunate to have the financial situation we have. So whatever we come up with, I don't think this is, if we want to make it more transparent, keep it the way it is, make it more transparent, where they have to, well, they always come and give a presentation, but then they do it twice. I don't know,
Not always.
but
Sometimes we're, given information about a marketing flyer of an event that's coming up, and,
I see what you're saying.
people don't come, we just say, oh, this event's coming up, do we want to support a table? I mean, that's happened before too.
Well, I would agree with
Not-
making everybody come before and put it on the record. I wasn't thinking about table sponsors, unless what you're talking about.
And then if it's whatever avenue that we go, whether it's one pot of money or if it's divided, we do need to have a specific amount. Like we identified some places in the budget, Heather went through the finance committee, that we know that we have this X amount of dollars, and if it's going to be divided up, whichever way we decide, or if we keep that pot of money, I don't want to get into the situation to where we took money from a budget. It was a roll-off for the street department, but it went for a need that came up for the airport, so then we got out of whack with the roll-off for, I want to make sure that we don't go into the budget piecemealing or grabbing, that we know exactly how much we have, where it's at, and where it's coming from, so to speak. Does that make sense? Does that seem fair? I think it's good accounting too for Heather.
We could probably, I think we could use edit dollars or general fund dollars. We wouldn't have to take anything from anything we've already budgeted.
I wonder how many scenarios truly exist to where there are situations in which there are no other funds available to support projects other than city dollars. Saying that something can't happen unless the city supports something. I wonder, I don't know the answer to that. My most recent suggestion arose from the fact that, we're concerned about these special circumstances or emergencies, and I certainly don't want to pin us into a corner and, have our hands tied. But I'm wondering how often that would actually be an issue, and if there would be times where we're like, okay, we really have to support something because there are no other, the city can't help in any way through, as council members we can't volunteer, or as, individuals of the community we can't hold a fundraiser ourselves, or, whatever it might be.
I think that nonprofits get by, but when they usually do whatever fundraiser they can and for individual donations, but everybody that gives just allows them to better provide. I don't think there's a situation where it's not going to happen unless but we enhance it, donate them to some of these organizations. And we can also look at it as an investment back into our citizens, because they service our community. If they're providing a service to the people that pay taxes, then we're reinvesting the money back into them.
So, We've had this discussion for a little over 30 minutes now.
In 3 months.
And I sense it going like this a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know we don't have full council present, and I'm not saying this to delay it in any way, but I think that I better understand some of the concerns with these emergency scenarios that could come about. I think Councilman Ellis presents something that is a viable idea that seems to be supported by a few council members. With all of that considered, if we were to have an action item from our 30-minute discussion, what should be next? How should we move forward? If we move forward at all, because it also seems that how we've been operating is also an option.
Blair,
So
you
let me offer,
In my attempt to move forward.
so here's what I think what I'm hearing is, I will prepare and complete the ordinance that everybody has had a chance to see, and finish that out in the method it has been prepared. I will prepare an ordinance that allocates funds to individuals to utilize as council members. I would ask Mr. Ellis if he would be okay with me maybe, so Ms. Conlon will be able to help me. I'm guessing in 2000 was Ms. Galligan the city attorney? Ms. Galligan's ordinance had said that you had $5,000 to utilize for beautification projects.
Our city attorney, our city council attorney did the ordinance he's talking about, yeah.
Who was that?
Sean.
Larry Weber.
Sean Weber.
Sean Lever.
Tom was an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's an attorney.
I forgot.
He graduated.
I got old, I forgot stuff. Well, so that ordinance gave, I mean, when I read it, it's like, it was $5,000 council member for non-reverting fund for purposes being utilized by individual council members at their discretion on improvement projects within the council member's district, beautification projects within the council member's district, or any other project that benefits the citizens of the city of Jeffersonville as a whole.
5,000 per councilman?
Yeah, I think that might be a little broad.
Excluding at large,
Oh.
I think
It's
that
just-
may be a little
yeah.
broad. You remember that because you were at large. So Mr. Ellis, if I would prepare an ordinance that
Which I didn't hear.
provides 9 pots of money of some kind with the same restrictions that the proposal that you have about who you can give it to. Not so much that anybody would be limited, but certainly, you know, it's not $5,000.
Ms. Conley,
Well,
do
yes.
you have a promotion budget?
No.
It sounds like that would be an option if the council decided not to have an application process. Is that correct? That's an alternative to having an allocated pot of money. So could I make the suggestion that we, after Mr. Wilder finished drafting that ordinance, we vote on that, and depending on how that vote goes, then we consider alternatives to that?
I don't
Like
believe,
that
I don't believe that I think Mr. Wilder's, the second ordinance he was going to work up is futile, because I don't think that'll fly with this council. So I hate for you to spend any time, because
Should we do 10,000?
I can hear, I can hear, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
It's not.
And
Maybe
so,
the
I don't
third-
want a pot of
maybe the
money
third
for-
ordinance would be, here's what the guidelines are that the council will consider before they make any decision about any.
Yeah.
And then just what you were talking about, Ms. John, here are, we will not give to a hate and crime group, we will not give to, we will not give to, we will not give to. We will not give to people from New Albany, we will not.
That one's key. That needs to be at the top
The
of the
top
list.
one, no New Albany. And then have 3 different things. And you guys just decide. And in defense of what, in your absence, when I said, why don't we come back and let you all talk about this so I can not be trying to develop you can take the heat, not me. So you all can develop your own policy, because I'm not a policy maker.
So,
So you want me to do 3 and shoot them to you all?
Yes.
And then you all can just address them?
but I would propose that we vote on the application process having, $20,000 biannually considered with the committee, because I truly don't, and I certainly don't want to speak for other council members that are not here. I don't know where everyone is at with that, but I think we start with that.
That'll be number one.
Do we have to have a dollar figure?
I think we do.
Well,
But
I think we do too.
so I'm going to put it in at 20, and then the debate.
Which is what we have discussed,
And the
yeah.
debate can do
Does the
whatever.
ordinance need to have a dollar figure, or can the ordinance reference the dollar that's in line item X of the budget?
If you tell me what
That
line
way,
item,
that way
We can
the
do that.
budget can change every year,
and you'll tell
and
me
we don't
what
have to
line
change
item
the
is.
ordinance.
I'll
We
put
could
it
do
I
on.
like
that.
that idea.
I like that idea.
And then I will have.
But I would specify where the fund,
What a line item it is.
where that fund is going to come from, because I
Right.
think it should be specified from gaming.
Right.
And I can get that information from the controller.
And then you have the flexibility during budget time to decide how much that should be.
Right.
Put money into that.
Right.
And then the second one, I'll just
From
go ahead,
whichever source.
it'll be simple and easy enough to do, because it'll be a hybrid of one, where each individual council member has so much, and I'll leave that blank, that they can,
Okay.
at their discretion, so long as it meets these things, and you all have that in case you get to that. And the third one will be just a very, city council believes giving away money to charity is a good idea, blah, blah, blah.
Investing in our community.
Investing in our community, that, I'll clean it up by time. And then the bottom will be, however, these these organizations will not be considered. And I think the 501(c) stuff is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, great.
So I will do that, and that kind of gets you, and that's kind of what I.
Are we also not considering not funding nonprofits at all? Has that been taken off the table?
Sounds like it has.
I think so.
Well, I think that all will be left on the table also, so that we can.
Well,
we can-
how about this? How about we see how, this is plenty for us to discuss. We see how, if there is a lot of opposition to funding at all, then at the next meeting after that, we can have language that eliminates spending.
Got it.
In the interest of time, I would suggest that we move on, because of the
Yes.
other
That was my goal.
item here is actually probably going to take more time than our first item there. Unless there's objection.
No, I'm ready to move on.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
All right.
Is this me again?
We're going to move on to the pay grade discussion, which I think we're going to the cleanest way to do this is, does everybody have their pay grades committee summary sheet that was given out to us?
Today?
No.
No, Callie gave it.
It was what was emailed, so
Oh.
you'll have it in your email. I'll just make a blanket statement. Basically what the summary sheet details is the decisions of the pay grades committee over several meetings. What this summary does not discuss are capped employees and how to move forward with either a policy, how to address capped employees. So I want to make that clear that this would not be a decision in any way on how to, on what policy or what stance we want to take on capped employees. What this does do is adjust and reform our pay grades to where we are more competitive and where we more reflect the market for our positions. It cleans up a lot of our pay grades and also gives us a wider pay range to where we do not have as many capped employees, which is a current issue. So under the new pay grades that are supported by the committee and sent from our consultant's suggestion, there would be just 2 capped employees under this new pay range system, which is significantly better than what we currently are. It also addresses longevity and had to move forward with longevity. So the committee was in full agreement that we continue longevity. First of all, that not be something that we eliminate or that we freeze, but that we continue the longevity. And that in order to simplify our accounting practices and to make it more clear as to what our employees their total compensation is. We would roll the longevity pay into their base pay. And then basically they would be paid the longevity along with their normal paycheck. So it wouldn't be do you want it annually? Do you want it every 2 weeks? Do you want it 6 months? So again, it's really cleaning up the accounting practices there. We also detail the financial impact to the city, as you can see. And then I have the last bullet point is just noting that depending on our decisions and if we want to move forward with these things, obviously we'll need to adjust the policies to reflect this decision. And it was recommended that we take a look at that closer to budget time, that we'd rather amend all of those ordinances at once and do it very cleanly. That way, again, we're just hoping to start this January of 2019, so we need to clean up those ordinances before then. Does the committee have anything else to add that I haven't mentioned?
I would just emphasize with the longevity that we decided, or we wanted to recommend that even though we want to roll that longevity into a dollar figure on the hour, those employees who are in the longevity program would still receive that annual increase in their longevity. It would just be on the dollar or on the hour increases that also actually helps them with their 3% raise, because they're also that following year will get the 3% on that longevity, which hasn't been the case when we've pulled it out and given it separate. It's not any dramatic increase or benefit, but it is somewhat of a benefit once you get further down into the changeover.
Did you all discuss in your committee what we're tied to with the contract as far as longevity with police and fire, which is the majority of them that are on longevity? I think Ann could probably help me with
That's
that.
completely separate and not included in this because it's under a different contract.
Right.
So
Yeah, but still, they have an option there to have it at the lump sum, and now we're trying to say to the ones that aren't and I think you have those figures. Do you mind helping me out here a little bit? Well, when you say that it only leaves us only a few amount of employees.
So I'm Ann Langley. I'm a civilian with the police department, so I know the contracts. I'm speaking for me and just a few others that I've talked to, but as far as the longevity goes, you're talking about 35 people out of 372. 80 civilians are receiving longevity. So 35 people out of 80, you're taking a choice away. You're not taking money away. You're not giving us any more money. Actually, if you put my longevity on my salary, I'll probably hit cap immediately. And so that doesn't help me at all because then I won't get a raise at all, to where I would if you keep it separate. Simplifying it, I do payroll. It doesn't simplify it at all because I still have 75 police officers. I have to divide it. So there's 3 civilian employees at the police department that you're affecting in a total of 35. So I don't know what impact you're looking to get.
So when you all discussed that outside of the contracts, was there more than 35 that you all were looking at with the longevity, putting it on their checks, or I guess that's where I'm a little confused.
There's 35 that are receiving it either twice a year or once a year out of 80.
One of the problems I have with you putting the longevity on their hourly pay is, as I've said before, we have some employees that are at the very lowest point when it comes to their making ends meet weekly. And those employees often save their longevities until the holiday season so they can provide Christmas cheer for their families. And I think it would be a travesty to take that away from them.
Yeah, unless you, I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but if you don't live in my household and you're not Dave Ramsey, I don't think you should tell me how to budget my money. Because I've been doing this for years now, and now you're telling me, oh, we're going to take this choice away from you, but, I mean, police and fire still get it. So I see all the things that you guys are voting for them, and I understand it, and I am grateful for those officers. but they're just employees getting this. That has nothing to do with their job duty, and it has nothing to do with mine. We're just employees.
I think the employees that approached me I think a lot of it has been where stuff's kind of come out this way and that way, where we didn't even get a report from the committee, and I think the longevity would kind of hit a lot of quite a few with the street department, parks department, where they said that, please don't do that because that is my savings. That's the only way I could do Christmas, or that's the only way I can go on vacation, or that lump sum that pays off some bills at the end of the year, or whatever. I think they use it as basically it's their money, it's their savings account to use where they need it most, is what was the concern that I was getting. So I don't know how everybody else feels since we're on the about longevity, but I'm kind of with Ron. It's theirs, and there's really not that many, to let them decide what they want to do with their money.
I think it's important to understand and remember something when we're talking about this, all of this. State, you got to always remember that you have four distinct classes of employees in the city. You have the elected officials whose salary has statutory requirements that say you can't do certain things. Then you have the police, who you have acknowledged and recognized are a bargaining unit, and you're committed to funding those things. And you have the fire department, who has a bargaining unit, and then you have the other employees who don't have a bargaining unit.
Right.
And so everybody understands, and I just make comments about the law. All of these things you're discussing about next year, if the following year the budget, there's not enough money to fund things the way you're talking about them this year, and these salary studies and longevity even in of itself can't be funded, then the council can in fact change everything, because you are an annual budget business, and no decision you can make can bind any other council beyond 1 year as it relates to employees, with the exception of the police and the fire. So a lot of the discussion, I guess, everybody kind of gets caught up in an idea that there's contract rights between that third set of employees, and there's not. So the whole idea of the longevity, I mean, how you pay it out, that's a decision you can make in your next budget, but there, at the end of the day, the next year, if Vesuvius erupts, and there's no money in the budget, you can do anything you want. All of these agreements about the wages and the pay grades, they are good for the budget you adopt. I mean, everybody understands that. I'm assuming, right?
They're adopted in our salary ordinance.
But every year. But every year.
Right.
So there's no long term.
We don't adopt the salary ordinance every year. What's in the salary ordinance stays until we go in, and it takes now you're talking about,
you have to adopt.
Every
year you adopt a budget, and the budget includes the salary ordinance. The salary ordinance is adopted every year, and this council cannot commit a salary ordinance beyond 1 year, because you cannot create unfunded mandates. You have the statutory authority to enter into contracts with police and fire. So that allows you to encumber money beyond 1 year, and then you have certain statutory authorities to encumber budgets under the Barrett laws beyond 1 year. And I'm just making a general statement to understand when you're talking about these ideas, that truly they're 1 year deals. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, they're just 1 year deals. So when you're thinking about it, understand next year it could all change. I'm not recommending it, by the way, I'm just saying that's just the legal fact.
Larry, when you say we have the statutory authority to enter into contract with police and fire, would the council also have the authority to enter into a contract with the other employees of the city, with the sanitation and parks and those other employees. I'm a former union employee, and I speak up, I stand for unions, I believe in unions, and if it was up to me, I would urge the other employees of the city to think about organizing.
And that becomes,
I don't think we could afford Larry.
Unions would do that for free.
and then I didn't make that comment. Ask me or whoever, but as you know, of clients, you know, that debate that you're getting involved in, understand right now it's a one-year issue.
You are free to do that. If you contact a union, they will come down and help you do that.
I don't think
My
she- I don't
5
think she-
employees. Oh, there's only 5 civilian employees at the police department.
But they would include everybody.
Ask me.
Ask,
Or SEIU does it too.
yeah. And Nathan, you've been on the council when that's been something that's been tried, and Vicki, when you were on the council, if I'm not mistaken, you all actually voted to recognize the FOP as a bargaining unit and recognize
Right.
the fire. And to that point, they had no representation. So I mean that, but as my client here, understand that part of it. I mean, this study is a one-year, what you adopt in your next budget, it's a one-year deal.
Understood.
Nobody has a right to come back and say, wait a minute, you've taken my longevity away, it's not a contract right. Or if you lower salaries, as long as you're not an elected official, which statutorily you can't lower salaries, you can do whatever, with the exception of police and fire. So, and I'm just saying that because that's just general information.
Okay,
That makes sense?
that makes sense.
Not really.
Did I do that? Makes sense.
That's all I had to say.
I'll just address a few things. So first I want to address the idea that in some way that the pay grades committee meetings were mysterious or weren't discussed outside of the committee meetings. I mean, I think that certainly I can speak for myself. I won't speak for the other committee members, but it's a discussion that we talked about. I mean, certainly I didn't make a formal report of what happened at each pay grade committee meeting at the following council meeting, but we don't do that with any of the committees really that we sit on. And so, I mean, that certainly was not the intent that these be meetings that no one had any idea that they were happening or what was being discussed. I thought we were pretty open about that. And it also sounds like we're being given some conflicting information. So, you know, of the people that were present in the meeting, which were representatives of the finance department, our human resources department, certainly Liz Gross, our consultant, you know, Les Merkley was at these meetings. So of the people that attended the meetings, in my opinion, it was very clearly communicated that in terms of longevity, that this would make accounting much easier and that it would simplify the process of how that's done. And that was really what was fueling part of this discussion. And then also that we had as a city a more accurate representation of what people were being compensated for their complete compensation. So I appreciate you bringing some of the comments that you made. What that tells me is that we have conflicting information. So, I mean, that certainly was...
Not so much information, but opinions.
Sure. And so, I mean, that's kind of where the conversation, and for those that were in the room, which were, you know, decision makers on this and that were invested, that's where the committee came to our opinion. I do think that, you know, I included the capped employees at the end of this agenda because it is a conversation we need to have, right? So certainly, and that I don't want to have that conversation today necessarily, but I think that Ann does make a good point as well that could influence where people fall on the spectrum, and then that's something that we need to address, and the city has had conversations about that, and that's something that we know we need to have that discussion, and ideally before budget. or when we're making those decisions. So I'm not eliminating that from the table at all.
And of course, I'm just one of 9. When we do have the conversation about capped employees, I want to come up with a solution that includes and addresses all capped employees. So if something is only addressing and you're still having the 2 that are not being addressed, we need to come up with something that they are addressed, because I think that's just fair.
Oh, well,
My opinion.
the reason that I list that there are 2 capped employees is because we currently have, is it 18? I'm looking at you, Kim. How many, the number of,
How many capped employees do we have, she's asking?
I don't have it written in front of me. But under the existing pay ranges, there are a lot more capped employees. And so just by simply changing the pay ranges, we're getting down to 2, which is a win.
Gotcha.
So, okay. So we're also preventing any expected future capped employees in the next bit, because we have people that are approaching the higher end of their pay range. So clearly we need to address that. So that's just purely looking at if we were to change these pay ranges to what is listed here, we're eliminating part of that problem. It's not completely eliminating it.
Yeah,
Okay, Kim?
And the other thing is, I mean, that's one of the reasons.
Come up to the,
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing, my ears are full, sorry.
Another reason so many of our employees are here, many of the people in the audience are capped, and I thought that was going to be part of our discussion. Christine and I began working with a consultant in August of last year. The full council was given a full packet with all the recommendations on multiple occasions, 3 that I know of. I have the dates that they were distributed. You know, from where I sit, I find it frustrating, because these are the people that I have to talk to on a regular basis, who knows what's going on. I feel like oftentimes people might think I, as the HR director, is not working on behalf of trying to support them through a pay range. I find it incredibly frustrating that here it is, almost a year later, we're still having the same discussion. So I would like to continue the discussion and have maybe some of the people in the audience who are affected to share their opinion on what they think, either about longevity or about capped pay ranges, recommendations. We've had recommendations in our meeting. I thought the idea was to have the 3 people who have met, and I appreciate the amount of work that Matt and Callie and Dustin have put into this process, to then have recommendations, and here we are still talking about recommendations and talking about another meeting. It's ridiculous. And I think that there are people in this audience that would agree, that are affected by it. I think it needs to be discussed, and I think some decisions need to be made. To Mr. Ellis's point earlier, make a decision, do it with your best judgment, don't make it personal, don't make it emotional, and let's just make a decision and move on. Thanks.
I will say that Kim was obviously a vital voice in our discussions, and I personally, rely on her expertise and her judgment. I rely on Heather's expertise and her judgment, because they're doing this day in and day out, and Kim talks to all the employees, and so that fueled a lot of our conversations and I'm not saying we agree on everything, but I certainly appreciate all the work that she puts in, and this has been, you're right, since August, that you've been promoting and pushing this. I know that there's just obviously discussion we had about, well, let me first suggest this. Do we want to hear from audience members or address some of the things that maybe aren't as controversial that we can see some movement on?
I think since we're on the topic of capped employees, I'd like to hear from the capped employees, since we're keeping it on the same. So I think, I know, Becky, you approached me before the workshop several weeks before and said you wished to speak. Let the record show Ed. Found it. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As one of those capped employees, this is what, our 7th year for a pay grades. The very first year, I received a $130 pay raise. That's 6 cents on the hour, capped out. So out of the 7 years, 3 years I did not receive any kind of a pay raise. 2 years I got a 3%. And the other 3 years, I got a 6.67, so less than 7 cents, a dime on another year, and this year I got 40 cents. And I am admin for drainage engineer. This year I got public arts. I also do Phil Caldwell's claims and a lot of his admin work. And, my cost of living goes up too.
Hi, I'm Linda Mills. I work in the Building Commission's office. This is the first year I've been capped. So it's just frustrating because just because you're capped doesn't mean you're not going to do your job. Doesn't mean that you're not going to come in every day and work just as hard as you did the year before. It would be nice to have an incentive, something to say instead of good job, just like everybody else that works, we work for money. I mean, we got bills to pay, cost of living goes up for us, just like it does for you. So if the pay range is not going to help us.
And for how long? Is it going to give us a raise for another year and then we'll be capped out again? Because this has been going on way longer since August for me. This is going 4 and 5 years for me.
So there needs to be something else for CAP employees, some kind of incentive, some kind of bonus, something to help until the payroll can catch up.
On the lines of a cost of living stipend or something?
Yes.
And when I'm here, I do my job.
Oh,
I don't play on the computer and paint my toenails or whatever. I do my job.
And we're here so long because we like working for the city.
Yes.
We like the city. And that's why we stayed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Geraldine Ellis, and I am the secretary for the fire department. And I as well agree totally with the two ladies.
Sissy, can I interrupt for just
Sure.
1 second? Becky, how long have you been with the city?
34 years.
34 years. Linda, how long have you been with the city? 22. And Sissy, how long have you been
Okay,
with the city?
back and forth, I've been with the city. I went to the fire department in 2010, but I actually started working for the city in 1990. So I have been here that long.
Okay.
And
Thank
I do agree, like Ann said, no one lives in our home. And it's a terrible feeling when you hear of everybody else getting raises, but then you're capped out, and you come in at the same time. Like they said, you do your job, you leave at the same time, but then they're getting raises and you're standing still. And I mean, I just actually feel that it's unfair. It just doesn't seem right. We all work for the city. Treat us all the same.
Thank you. Can you ladies tell
Hi,
us how long
guys.
you've been working for the city, please?
I'm in my 25th year.
And this will be my 20th year. And this year's our first year we both has been capped out. So we're just asking to please consider the cost of living for my household and just help us.
I tell you honestly, too, one of the hardest parts for me was I was given a piece of paper telling me what my raise was, counting on it, and then when it came time to give it to me, I was told, oops,
You're capped out.
sorry, you're capped out, you're not getting anything.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
You make valid points.
All right, thank you.
As you're department head, right?
I'm just the manager. I'm not a department
Okay.
head. Mm-mm.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
It's also really hard to see other people get reclassified positions they may or may not be qualified for, just so they can get in a different pay grade and get that raise. And then you beg and you plead and they can't get through.
Hello,
How long you
I'm
been?
Richard Cross. Been there 18 years at the street department, and I'm topped out also at my pay, and there's been several other employees I'm gonna speak for too that are topped out in our department. We need a raise also. We can't support our families, either they gotta work another job or something like that, but we're just stuck in a rut. And I wanna stay further, I wanna retire from the city, but I want more money. They want more money, and I like working for the city. I mean, we're in the heat, the cold.
Oh, yeah.
We're called out at night cutting trees out of roads. I mean, we're out there to the bitter end, and if they need something, they call on us to do it, and we're there to do it, and we get the job done too when we do it. So if y'all could help us out, we appreciate it. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all your service to the city. Is there anybody else?
Okay. So it sounds, to me that there's overwhelming support for the committee's recommendation of adjusting the salary ordinance, or the pay grades, to eliminate some of these situations where we have, most of these situations where we have capped employees. The recommendation that was based on what came out of Liz's report, as Ms. Yan already said, did take care of almost all of the capped employees, save for I think 2, and I don't even know what 2 those are. But it seems that with that recommendation, we're making enormous progress. There were questions as to, well, for how long will we be no longer capped? And I think that we should definitely be looking for that answer to provide for those folks who are worried about that, because I think that's a valid question. And that may be something that HR has, and I just don't have in my notes.
Well, I think something too, Matt, to hold your thought, to keep in mind though, when we're talking about these new pay, nobody in the city outside of us has seen the new proposed pay grades.
Right, and that's...
I think that's why we got a lot of these questions.
Sure. So maybe then I should be reassuring some of the folks in the audience then that we understand that there are a number of people that are capped out and aren't receiving raises, and we are trying to push for policy that mitigates that. The one thing that I'm hearing, that the committee recommended that may need to be revisited is the longevity. I know when the longevity was discussed in the committee, I had heard around City Hall that there were some questions, and I thought the questions revolved around the elimination or the pausing of the longevity program, and that wasn't the case, so I thought that was a non-issue. But apparently the issues weren't exactly as I thought they were. So maybe that is something we need to rediscuss. I'm not sure. I'd be interested in the administration's position on that. And then as far as there was a comment made about certain employees are moved or put in different positions to avoid salary caps or to get into new pay grades or new pay ranges. That's purely administrative. And there's nothing that I'm going to do as a city councilor that can mitigate those things from happening. I understand that would be frustrating, but I'm not sure that there's policy that we can put in place to prevent that from happening. As far as the longevity being put on the hourly wage, when we discussed that, I thought that was something that would be advantageous and desirable for the employees that are in the longevity program. If you're capped out at $4,000 of longevity a year, that's an extra $4,000 that you would get that 3% raise on, as long as you're not capped out. If that's not an advantageous benefit, then maybe we need to discuss again if that's a change we want to make. But I really thought that would be something welcomed. Apparently not. So I would invite Kim to come up and kind of walk us through any of the other positions in the recommendations that maybe we haven't covered. If there's anything else that needs to be discussed, or if you have anything you want to add.
I just think the one question that you mentioned is that definitely I think the council's going to have to decide what your position is on the longevity. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, what is your position on capped employees? If you want to recognize capped employees with an incentive of $500, $700, $1,000 and make that a bonus, or not accept cap, I mean, that's clearly the decision that the 9 of you guys have to make as elected officials. The recommendations have been vetted. We've picked through them. There are things that people like. There's things that people don't like. I don't think we're ever going to come up with a pay policy that is acceptable to everyone, nor do I think there's ever going to be a time where that policy is going to not impact one person unfavorably over somebody favorably. I mean, there's always that ouch factor. But as you've heard me drone on and on and on about over the years, is that we get to this point when we sit on this stuff for as long as we do. And I hate to sound like a beaten dead horse, but we started this process last August. It was presented in January, and here it is almost July. We're discussing it again. If you know or pay attention to the market or what unemployment rates are, I'm sure that dollar amount shifted again. You know, so we're talking about salaries and pay ranges based upon data that our consultant that we paid decent money to did over a year and a half ago. And then you wonder why I come back again. Well, I come back again because by the time we finally approve it, it's basically, we kicked the can down the road another 2 years, 2.5 years, and it's time for me to do what you're paying me to do and what I try to do to make sure that our employees are paid well, and that we attract new talent and retain the talent that we have. So it just gets to be this very, very vicious cycle, and I'm not going to apologize for getting so overwhelmed by it and frustrated by it because I'm very passionate about it. I think we have a lot of really, really good employees, and I think at one of our last council meetings, I kind of had that same conversation. You know, why do we not want to keep and reward people who come to work every day? And why do we not want to be an employer of choice and try to attract good talent? So with that, I mean, the 9 of you are elected to do tough jobs, and I know some of those decisions are not easy. I think that HR and the committee members have done what we can do to pull together the recommendations. I think now the work's going to be on you guys to try to make that determination on what you want to do with longevity and then what you want to do with capped employees.
Can you tell us which department the two, if we adopted this pay grade, these pay grades, which department does the two cap?
There's actually, I believe, 4. Callie said 2. One person has switched jobs. And again, the data that I have is based upon last August.
Right.
So, and the spirit of trying to limit costs, I've not had the consultant go back and regenerate all.
Do you remember
that.
what departments there?
One is Building Commission. One,
I know.
Christine, one is Parks. And then most of them have been alleviated by changing the street and sanitation laborers to refuse workers, and with the new 30 up to the 35% pay grade, all of those have been shifted and taken care of. I'd have to go look at my notes to see which 4.
So there are currently, as according to the report, and this is what we had discussed, there are currently 18 employees that are capped in our pay grades today.
Right.
So that's the number of what we currently have as of 2018. My apologies if it is.
Yeah, and then part of it too goes back and forth between with longevity, without longevity. So I've got a spreadsheet that adds the longevity, I've got a spreadsheet without, so it's all kind of like spinning in my head right now.
So more than likely, if we adopted the new pay grades, but left longevity as it is, then we wouldn't have any capped employees after that.
Correct.
Okay.
There may be one, and that's only because they took a different job into a lower pay grade.
Okay.
But it's also that person took a job into a lower pay grade, but I really don't think that job is exactly what it needs to be. I think that job has definitely changed.
That later.
Yes, my intention with that is to reevaluate that position, which I'm currently in the process of doing, to be reassigned to hopefully a new pay grade.
So if we adopted the new pay grades, left longevity as it is, we would be on good footing with respect to people who are capped.
That is my estimate right now in my head. And Matt and Callie, is that pretty much what you remember? I mean, I have a binder back there like this thick, just this.
I have a question.
Yes.
Kim, what do you know, and you may not know this off your head, do you know what is considered a livable wage?
We asked that question.
Oh, let's not I'm backing away from the microphone.
We asked that question in the committee meeting,
Yeah.
and even our consultant was not.
Not comfortable getting.
One of the things that is really going to help, and again, this is kind of when we.
You just said we're here to make tough decisions.
What I will answer, I'm getting ready to answer. $15.
And
we decided $15, and with our revised.
Who's we decided?
The national.
Our group, our committee, and with consultant.
No.
No, the national.
No, we did not come to that conclusion. We decided that when you're looking at what is a livable wage, there are so many factors, like was said here, we have no idea what factors go into play when it comes to a livable wage. And we decided that in putting these new salary ranges together, that we wanted the ability for anybody to be hired into the city to at least have the possibility to make a minimum of $30,000 a year when they're hired. That doesn't mean that all of our base salaries are $30,000
full-time.
a year.
Right.
But full-time employees would have the ability, our managers, the department heads, would have the ability to hire at least $30,000 a year.
So that then spurred two decisions. Number one, that we should increase, which this was already a conversation, but that we should increase the hiring manager's discretion of up to 35%
of the pay range.
Of the pay range, which gives the manager the option to deem what they appropriate for the candidate. And then also you'll notice on pay range 2, that 35% mark is $15 an hour, which is about the 30,000 that Matt is referring to.
Right.
There was a lot of considerable discussion going into that, and we felt that...
Considerable lively discussion, right?
It was lively, yeah, it was like referee.
Yes.
Dustin, looking at you. But we actually increased that pay range and felt that $15 that's kind of just the number that was compromised and agreed upon. And
we agreed that would help with turnover, that would help to attract, yes.
And also to give some autonomy to
turnover,
our managers they're making these decisions, and that's something that we heard outside of these meetings, people saying, we can't offer, and then they go to other places because of the system we have in place, so we thought 35% was a good number.
I just heard a report on the news this week that said that a person that would be able to live in a 2-bedroom home or an apartment would have to make at least $36,000 a year. So,
and where is that?
And that's in this area here, in the Louisville area. But it looked at all the different areas of the country, and it was included, the Louisville area was included that, and this area was at $36,000 a year.
So Mr. White, back to your original question, yes, I think that would work.
You mentioned turnover. What's our turnover ratio? Do you track that year by year?
Yeah, sort of. It's kind of loose, but yeah, we have been working on some numbers, thinking that you ought to want that come budget time. And certain departments definitely have higher turnover than others.
Do you know how many employees we lost last year?
Just total? Oh, in 2017 or like year to date now?
Either way.
I'm guessing 17 to 20, and most of it's been in wastewater and street department, animal shelter.
I'd like to add something real quick, if I may. When you're talking about the turnover, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted Clark and his crew to be here. I'm by their department, so I keep in contact with them, with the guys. I know their equipment. I know what they're doing. And I always go in and check on them when it's hot and it's cold, which we all talk about. They work in the elements. And I went through in pretty good detail, and it was hard because the print's so small. But I think just today or yesterday, the official study came out. I'm talking about the AIM. And when I went through and compared us to other second-class cities, our street department, our sanitation crews are way below. And even going through before you offer these pay grades that even might affect and bring in different even department heads up, we're within. According to this, we're within pretty good range of it, other than...
With the proposed or the current?
I don't know how this is different.
Because our consultant does look at the AIM survey. I have not seen the 2018 survey,
Okay.
but she did have the 2017 data.
Okay, this is 2018.
And she
But I did
considers
not have the
other-
2018 data.
She considers other municipalities of similar size, population in
Even
the
Metro
area.
Louisville, we looked at
And she
other
also looks at
for-profits,
private- Yeah, she also looks at private market for the Louisville area as well.
which is why they did go up to a new pay grade.
What point are you making?
The
that
point I'm trying to
we pay them less?
yes, we do. And and with working with Clark, and matter of fact, we even had, I think, Ron, I can't remember what other council we were in there when we were talking about the Aston there, but we had the street department in there and we had 4 council in there, and Clark is having a big turnover. He can't keep his CDLs. He can't keep a lot of trying to get new ones coming in because they can't under the conditions.
Well,
and
paying up to the 35% will make a huge difference.
Well, I know Clark was trying to hire some drivers earlier in the year, and the maximum amount that he could pay that employee when he started was $3 less than that employee could make at the lower grade starting somewhere else.
And moving into 2019, I can certainly share that data with.
Okay, good.
And look
The
at it.
CDL driver with the proposed pay grade at the 35% higher would be $18.81 an hour. Is that in line with the AIM survey or still below?
Well, I don't have that pulled up here.
Are you looking at Class 2 cities as well? I mean, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I made
Okay.
sure only Class 2 cities I looked at. Now, I didn't look at all the Class 2, just the ones that are kind of around our population. And the 2 that are like Lawrence and West Lafayette, the ones that are around our...
So you should look at Kokomo and Carmel and Noblesville.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're all in here, but I didn't have time to look at every single one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you went through there
Well, just
thoroughly, so I thought maybe you had data. Okay.
So the average CDL driver in the AIM survey makes what? Do we have that?
Well, I think it's fair to say that if that data supports what you're saying, I will certainly take a look at it, and after we go through this, I'll come back and make another change if necessary.
Well, but we can change it now.
Yeah.
Clark?
Let's take action.
Thanks, give me a minute. What I want to say on that was that we start our CDL drivers out around 1490, maybe 15 sometimes. And most people, our drivers, CDL drivers, start out making at least, I would want to see if we can move ours up to at least 17 at least. And most of them make 18 something starting out, but yet with so many jobs open everywhere with 4 CDL drivers, they're not only making at least 18 something, they also companies giving bonuses to CDL drivers because the demand is so high. I'm still short one right now with what we have because I can't get nobody to get in for the salary. We've had people that wanted to come, and we have guys that's on the road, and they want to get back with their families here. But they cannot live with what we start our CDL drivers out with.
So with the new, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
With the new proposal, you will have the discretion to hire them up to 35% of the minimum, which is $18.81.
Okay.
Would that be good, or you need that to be higher?
That would be good. That would be
and
good.
if you needed to go beyond that, then you would have to approach the council.
Right, you're exactly right.
You are able to do that.
Yes, that would be a whole lot better that way, yes.
Okay.
Well, and I also think too, I think that's one position that we know that currently that's the most demanded position in this market. That came out in a study that was done in one southern Indiana. So I'm happy to hear that this is more in line.
Yes.
And I feel that with specifically the pay range 2, 3, and 4 positions, which our consultant addressed in detail, that these will all be more competitive, again, based on what we see happening in the market, and will give you more ability to get candidates in the door.
And what I want to say, and not only with the street department, and I know that we had other departments, other people talking today, and they made some good points, which makes sense to me, is that they still come in here every day and giving their all. The thing is that, and it's good because of progress the city has made, and the city's getting bigger, and we're taking on more and more responsibilities. That's why I think it's so important that you all look at the capping out. I think it's so important that we look at adjusting salaries. I think it's so important that we continue to show our employees that you are there for them, which most of you are, and all of you are, because I can't complain about anything. At least my big thing is if you all try to listen. That's the big thing. I know you can't go everything all the time we won't. I understand that. But at least you all try to listen. It's so important to try to listen, and we're here to try to help you all and let you all know what we need to continue the good workforce we have and what we do. And I tell you what, I shake my head sometimes at our guys because I just don't know how they do it. and what they try to do and what they try to get back in their work every day, and then also what they try to live off of. And again, when I speak, I've been around the city for a long time, so I can speak for the street department, but I'm speaking for the other people in this city too. When it comes to capping out, when it comes to salary, when it comes to the conditions of work, in which you all have helped us improve tremendously on equipment and everything. You had us in a great direction, so I do appreciate that. But I want to thank you all for giving me a minute. I'm sorry getting Kim's way, but I want to let you all know that at least what y'all trying to say and trying to do, that should put us back in a good direction as far as CDL drivers. And we have some excellent guys that want these jobs. But with the family and the way they're living down, they work somewhere else making $22, $24 an hour, and then they come to our place and say, well, I only can give you $14.90, maybe $15. They go home, I said, hey, I'm not crazy, man. I know what my wife would do. So I said, when you go home, talk to your wife and tell her that you're going to say, well, I've been making $22 an hour, and then I'll pay you $14.90, and we live in this $300,000 home. Hey, I'm not going to be responsible for everybody getting put out or whatever. But I'll tell them the truth. But what I will say is I appreciate what you all trying to do, and I really do.
Clark, so with the proposed pay grade, the street maintenance refuse worker would be brought up minimum $14 an hour, but you could hire people in up to 35% of that, which is $16.71 an hour with a max of $21.75 an hour. And then for the CDL, 35% is $18.81 with a max of $24.50. That sound acceptable to your department?
Definitely it is. Definitely, and I appreciate that. And one more thing before I leave, and I know you all don't want to. But if y'all still would consider with the growth and increase we have, if y'all still would consider, and I said this before, I think to Lisa and maybe Ron, consider maybe a couple more employees for our department as far as the workload. I know it may not go on this agenda for tonight, but I at least want to bring it up.
You already brought it up in the mayor's even.
Kim, question. Do you have any idea how many of our employees are also on public assistance?
No, I would not have access to that information.
Uh-oh, our attorney's jumping.
I am your all's lawyer. You are my client. I am supposed to refer to the law.
Right.
I want you to refer to the law the same way I did when you all were embroiled in what I think is a contract that you don't need to be a part of, police and fire. That's not your venue. You've got it. You've taken it. You've dealt with it. I would merely just read to you Indiana Code 36473, appointed officer, deputies, and other employees' compensation. This section does not apply to compensation paid by a city to members of its police and fire departments. Subject to the approval of the city legislative body, the city executive shall fix the compensation of each appointed officer, deputy, and other employee of the city. The legislative body may reduce but may not increase any compensation fixed by the executive. Compensation must be fixed under this section not later than November 1st of each year for the ensuing budget year. Compensation fixed under this section may be increased or decreased by the executive during the budget year for which it is fixed. Notwithstanding subsection B, the city clerk may, with the approval of the legislative body, fix the salaries of deputies and employees under 36.411.4. As your lawyer, I'm just going to tell you, that's the law.
What you're saying, all this is just a suggestion?
In
these pay grades?
Yeah, and upstairs, and I went to a little Presbyterian school, and shall meant something there. Shall, it says the legislative body may reduce, but not increase any compensation fixed by the executive. The executive shall fix the compensation. That's what fixes your compensation. You guys, I appreciate that they're trying their best to get in this compensation discussion. I'm just going to tell you, I'm inclined to believe the rule of law says you don't. Now, but you can do what you want to do.
But this will act as a guide to them.
Yeah, but these guys don't have the ability to make those decisions. The budget has to be handed down from the fourth floor, and then you may reduced, but
We'll have a
not
fourth floor. Who's on the fourth floor?
Well, whatever floor it is.
We're not, we're not downtown anymore.
So is that finance or the mayor?
He's talking about 501 East Court Avenue.
It's the mayor.
Well, that's news to me, because every year I've been here, this is what's done, so, okay.
That's the
Are you telling me these committee
All
meetings?
the attorneys figured out, and then you tell me, so,
the
okay?
next step is
That's,
fund.
thank you,
And
yes.
you all fund it.
And that's where.
Okay, so it's the same thing but different, okay, I
Just
got
keep going
it.
around.
Okay. Mr. Ellis, to your question, no, I would not have access to that information, but I can tell you that we have a very large percentage of employees who have second jobs, if that helps.
We're not, no, I was gonna say something funny. I'm not gonna say that.
What?
I'm curious, because we hear, I'm concerned about increasing wages. I mentioned livable wage a while ago, and the room exploded. To me, if we're hearing that we're gonna bring everybody in at 35%, that's the recommendation, at least.
No, have the availability to make that
I just
decision
heard from one
if
department head
given.
that said he's gonna bring them in at that, and I
No, I don't
understand
think
that.
that's what Clark said. I don't think he's saying he's gonna bring them all in at 35%. Because,
I said he could.
exactly, not that he is, I mean, and that's part of HR's role, and he doesn't. And I gave that data, you all have that data
How
as
many
part of
people
the
do we
questions
bring
you
in at
asked
the
too.
minimum? Clark, how many people? do
We
you-
have that data, I gave that to you all, we did a spreadsheet. You were given
Okay.
that at one of the committee meetings.
I don't know why we
That
don't,
okay?
instead of saying we're allowing this, why don't we just bring the minimum higher
Well,
and leave it at 25%? of
Because-
the
because
discretion?
there's, I mean, if you're looking at just specifically pay range 4, which is where the CDL drivers fit into, you have 20 positions under that pay range, right? So I mean, that's part of it, I think, and that's also the highest pay range that's not exempt. So, I mean, if we want to single out one specific
It does.
position and then create a whole new pay range just for that position that's not exempt, that's a...
I'm
You know what I
actually
mean?
thinking pay grade 1 through 3, because if we say in the livable wage, as somebody said 15, pay grade range 4 starts at 15, well, more than that. And then, plus they have the administration has the ability to start them above the minimum in pay grade 4. So in pay grade 1 through 3, why don't we focus attention there to get those up
Yeah,
where
so-
they are?
Well, I apologize, because when we were talking about Clark bringing people up at the 35%, we were discussing the CDL drivers, so I thought that's what we were continuing to talk about. On the pay ranges, I think 2 and 3, all 3 of them were addressed. I mean, they've been bumped up already.
They have been, in essence, changed.
But not to
And
not
if-
to livable, according to what we just heard.
Yes, you can pay them up to $15. The other thing is, to answer your question, we have that data, and the data supports, Nathan, that typically on the average, our managers and directors are not even hiring at the 25%. And you should have gotten that in one of your packets, but I can certainly have that resent. But it actually supports just the opposite. And I think Ed had requested that, and
Another significant conversation that was had was, and a concern is, as we bring up minimums even further, you have a very large ripple effect in terms of compression with other employees. So there were a lot of numbers that were thrown out as what should the minimum be, what should anyone entering the city, what should that number be for full-time? And the committee,
The compromise was, it was 14, but allowing the 35%.
up to the 35%, up to 15. That was ultimately where we came, and all 3 of us had different opinions of what that should be, and that's where we wound up. And also our consultant was very cautious of us continuing to move that up, because then we get into, again, the ripple effect for all of the other employees. Well, I'm working with someone that has no years of experience making the same that I do, being here you have to move everyone else up, so. We felt like this was a good depiction of the market and what these positions are currently being advertised as in our area.
Well, we still have to have that recommendation from
Exactly.
the executive in order before we
I'll
can
bring
do
it.
anything about this.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I thought it was that simple, I mean,
You know?
We can approve the
but I
pay
brought
range.
it in January.
What did we,
If I brought it in
What if we
January and it's
spend-
been
I mean-
tabled and discussed at committee, I mean,
Is
then
Kim
why,
not an extension
how am I
of
supposed to think that it's up to the
Right.
the
executive?
executive? I mean, is this not? I
Then
mean,
why do we
that's what I
continue,
thought.
why are we 7 months down the road? I
I
mean,
mean, unless Merkley attended committee meetings.
I understand that, yeah.
That's what I thought.
When we talk about having recommendations from the administration, I feel like those have come through the committee.
Thank
via
you,
Kim.
yes, that's my point.
Yeah, Kim
Via
and
Les
Les and
And here it
And
is.
Heather.
Heather and.
I
It'll be
mean,
July and we still have a decision. So thank you, yes, that's the point I just made. So,
so I don't know that we're waiting on
I'm
some
prepared to-
recommendation from somebody.
You have to give, but what I'm saying is just procedurally, the mayor has to give you the budget with all these numbers in it. You all act on the budget. So with all due respect to you all as my client, I feel like you guys get placed in a position where you all are being forced to make decisions about folks. They're holding you accountable for those decisions when the reality is you're the legislative branch of government. The
Right.
executive tells you what they want to spend it, how they want to spend it. With all due respect to you, and I just want to call you Ms. Pearson. That old,
It's okay,
With all due respect to Ms. Pearson, if the mayor wants to recommend to this council that there are no capped employees, all he's got to do is present them the budget, and they deal with it.
I mean, and
You all don't have to make that decision.
I completely follow. What we're discussing
only
is,
that
are we
easy.
going to make a decision today, or are we going to make a decision in October? And I appreciate having the in-depth discussions now, because it's taken us since August to get here. And so if we start that discussion after a budget is proposed to us in October, we're not passing a budget on time.
yes.
So I totally get what you're saying, but in my head, I'm thinking, okay, am I making a decision today, or am I making a decision in October? And I like having information further ahead than just in October getting a budget.
Well, I looked over the pay grades, and I'm all for expanding the pay grades to help our employees. But, which we're time-wise now, we can either do it, I can meet with you, I can meet with Matt,
I'm available
Callie, or
anytime.
whoever, but I do have, with going through the AIM and going through, and this, I don't guess everybody has it, where it says page 2 of 3, where if we adopt these pay grades, how it'll affect these departments and number of jobs and all, and going through, I personally can support, just to move this conversation.
Okay, are we making a personal decision, or are we making a group
No, I'm
decision?
just letting
or
everybody
decision
know.
On a consultant.
So as you're
So is this an,
The
so
2018
workshop-
stuff wasn't even available, Lisa.
in this workshop, we will either vote to recommend these new ranges or not, correct?
Right,
And then at the council meeting, we will pass the ordinance.
not at this council meeting.
There's
Right, we
It's not on.
won't today because it's not on the agenda.
Okay. But so at the next council meeting, then we'll vote on the ranges.
Yes,
One meeting, one reading or 3?
it would be 3 readings.
There would be 3 readings.
So-
And then
the end of
after,
July.
assuming that's approved, then we have to also update all of the ordinances that are impacted by that ordinance, which is
There's a
our...
salary administration policy
Salaries,
that
yeah.
I've pretty much drafted based upon the 3 of your all's recommendations.
And then that also impacts our budget for October, which we start having meetings for that in August.
Yes.
So we need
So-
Which
to-
impacts
we
the
need to-
salary ordinance, which, yes.
So,
But I wasn't
Based on that-
recommending making a personal decision. I was trying to recommend, before we take this to
I
a
just wanted to
vote-
clarify, because you said you personally would approve it, so I just wanted
I
to
can
make
only
sure that
speak for
we're
myself.
all,
I can only speak for myself.
so.
I move that we
But-
give a favorable, that we recommend passing the new pay ranges as proposed. That's my motion.
Were you just saying that we should look at the AIM report?
I thought we were
Well, if
taking,
this-
oh,
To
you're
go to
moving
the
on
council
with the
meeting, and then it has
favorable.
3 readings, then we have time to adjust it and amend it, right?
Right.
So why don't we just...
I can
move
certainly
forward?
get that to the consultant, and I can look at it compared to what we have.
Well, finish your thought. I mean, if that's, I mean,
I just had some conversations with the administration and some other council, and there's concerns with when you have department heads. That's a whole other conversation. I don't want to go into it, but it's an important conversation we have to have before this goes to a final vote.
I don't understand what conversation you're referring to.
Well, we were given where you had department heads to get a bump, a significant bump.
We can eliminate that.
That's what I was trying to get to
But we
have
can't
that
do it if we
conversation.
don't act.
Yep.
But that's what I was going to say, when we act, I need to do this, get this addressed before we act, but I kept getting interrupted.
I see.
That's what I was
So-
trying
Well,
to
there's a
say.
motion on the table.
Well, so Lisa, what you are suggesting is that we just specifically readdress the department heads that are impacted by the pay range changes?
No, we can move this forward for the sake of time and for the sake of, so we can go to the next council meeting, get it on the agenda, which will take the two.
But eliminate
I was
department
just
heads.
saying, I need to have some serious conversation, whoever wants to have it with me, on the department head piece of this.
Because everyone was evaluated, so if you want us to remove the department heads, I mean,
Yeah,
that's...
so, I mean,
Move forward.
the
Because some of
consultant,
these positions aren't department heads.
No,
They're
just-
managers
no,
or
exactly.
assistant
That's what I
directors
said.
or,
It's just.
most
It's
of them are
multiple
not,
positions.
most of them are,
Just down here.
I mean, every single position is affected by this. So it's a majority, not department heads, that are impacted by the pay ranges.
Right.
Right, so I mean, they're,
Right.
but all were addressed and considered individually by our consultant, and then her recommendations were presented to us comprehensively in what we had.
And the AIM survey, the 2017 AIM survey was part of that.
In an effort to move it forward, and since we'll have a chance to go in more detail before we pass the ordinance, I'll second the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, I got a motion and a second.
Are
Any
we-
further?
Do
which
you have a
is to,
clarification?
Recommend the new pay ranges.
And that includes the 35%
Yes.
for hiring
That's
managers?
presented.
Okay.
And that's your second to that clarification.
Yes, and like I said, as it stands, we'll have a chance to tweak it or make some changes as we move along through the process. So, in an effort to move it forward, I throw a second out, and I'm going to support this.
Okay. Any other further discussion?
I just have a comment about the 35%. You know, that 35% was put in originally as a check and balance for
25%.
25% was, that's correct. It was 25%. And I fully understand that there's times that there needs to be flexibility. But in my mind, there still needs to be some check and balance. And I would like us to consider or to sleep on or whatever the idea of maybe saying 35% is at the discretion of the department head and Kim, whatever, up through pay grade 6 or whatever, till you're getting up into the higher levels of pay. And then when you're talking about the extra 10%, you could be talking an extra $5,000 or so that is just given at the discretion, which is fine. My question is, we're told, oh, we'll lose the employee, but if we would commit to say we can turn that around in 24 hours, where the department head or Kim or the mayor makes the case, we need to give this ex-employee $5,000 more, 10% more than the 25%, or it could be even more than that.
Can I get you to sign that in blood for
We
the
have
24 hours?
We have an entire ordinance that governs that.
Yes, we do.
And we're changing that.
No, we're not.
If we
It would
approve
change
this, we're
from
changing it
25%,
from
but
25 to 30.
there are still some
We're changing
checks
it
and
10%,
balances.
is what we're doing.
No, what the process is, if you want to go above the 35%, we have a process for that. They go to the council president, the council president goes to the HR, then she comes back with a recommendation, and we vote on it.
Currently, it's
If
at 25%.
you don't want to do the 35%.
And we're
then
getting ready
we
to
can-
make it 35.
But
So
we
we're
can
at that-
amend that once the ordinance hits our table for consideration.
Yeah. I'm just saying to consider.
Yeah.
I would be more in favor. I fully get what Clark was talking about, the CDL drivers. We're competing at that. But when you get the higher level, I'll say the professional positions, no disrespect in anybody, but those.
Oh, sure, none taken.
You've got to tell somebody I got 24 hours to return because you counted my offer. Then go through the same procedure. Go to the president distributes it. You make your case why we got to pay 10% more. I don't know if we've ever said no, but I just still think it's good to, as a check and balance, to say we went through this
Yeah.
process.
And we have said no.
I feel comfortable using Kim's judgment on that because Kim has to approve any of those.
And I think when you see the report that I send you, you will realize that there are a whole lot of discussions behind the scenes with myself and Clark, myself and every other department head before those offers are ever made. It's not like every department head or manager comes and says, oh, we're going to pay them this much because we can. And I think you'll feel a little bit better if I will resend that email to you.
I think it's a good point to make, though, and I completely understand your point that obviously the higher you get, the more money that becomes.
Yeah, and if there's a trust issue, maybe we need to talk about that.
The standard, again, this is from our consultant, the standard is 50%, and as a committee, we decided 35% was much more appropriate. So, I mean, we did come down from that, but I think, it's still worth discussing if that's...
Has there been a second to Dustin's?
Yes, but I needed, Dustin, and Ed, just for clarification, did we address longevity in your all's motion? Is that included?
That's not in the...
Okay, we're keeping that separate. I just wanted, so people out here know, okay. Okay, so...
One last question for Kim. On when Liz or Ms. Gross is comparing all these, is she comparing only hourly rates, or is she comparing the benefits too?
No, the benefits are a whole nother, I don't think we have enough money to pay somebody to
Which is a whole...
to do that.
A fantastic package that we offer as a city that...
Yes. And to that point, though, one of the things we've always wanted to do in HR is to be able to, in BSNA, our software program, has a module that I think we can purchase to actually show what total compensation is, which is one of the reasons that kind of trying to look at rolling in longevity so that people actually know what their salary is, but that's a whole nother topic.
To clarify, if we adopt and pass the salary ordinance with the new salary pay ranges and the new minimum 35% midpoint marks, all of that is completely separate from what we have to do with longevity, which would be addressed in the salary administration policy, correct? That will be addressed after we've...
And the capped, the red circle.
Right.
But, yes.
Yeah, that affects capped as well.
Right.
Okay.
So, that will be another discussion that we can continue to evolve.
So is that a discussion, or am I supposed to, as part of the executive, come back and say, hey, this is our recommendation, and you say...
Well, I think we have the information.
This is the recommendation.
Make a call. I think it's just
kind of
we
a little
want
more
to make...
confused now.
We need to act or not act.
Thank you.
I'm going to take this to a vote. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. So this is going on with the recommendation to be on the next council.
For the pay range.
And I'm available tomorrow if you'd like to meet with me. Thank you.
I'd just like to emphasize for the rest of the council and for everybody that's in the audience, we've put months of work into these issues, and it's not, we're doing our best to push forward to make this better for everybody involved, be the employees, the administration, the council, and budgeting. There has been a lot of work put together through all this, through HR, through the committee members, and through the consultant. So hopefully, we'll continue to go with the discussion on some of the points that we're not sure on, one being the longevity. But I think I think we're getting to a much better place with our pay ranges and what we can offer in terms of salaries for capped employees.
And what I'll just add to that is we're not kicking the can down the road. We will be addressing it before budget.
It's going to be on next council.
And in the future, I think instead of three of us taking 3 months to work through all of this with Kim and our consultants, maybe we should just do this in an open setting with everybody present from the beginning next time.
I agree.
Because that should have been how we handled this, but it was let's put a committee together and they can figure it out and come with recommendations. Well, that worked to an extent, but it doesn't get all the details ironed out. And this level of transparency is absolutely necessary so that everybody's on the same page and all of our employees are comfortable with knowing what's going on and knowing what we're feeling from the beginning instead of 8 months later.
And I appreciate everybody letting them have a say today. Thank you all for that.
And thank you all for coming out. It's appreciated.
I'm going to go ahead and adjourn so we have a few minutes for our council meeting. So I have a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion.
So moved. Adjourn.